Good evening, everybody, and welcome to an evening with the great Frank Clark. It is going to be amazing. Let's jump into this. Ladies and gentlemen, let's get some applause in the chat for the great man himself, Frank Clark. Frank, an absolute honor to have you on the show. Thank you so much.
Pleasure to be here.
Thank you. Really appreciate you taking the time. And we've had to reschedule this a couple of times, obviously, with stuff going on at Forest and what have you. And chat, get your highs in to the great man. Look at that. Martin saying Frank Clark, legend. We are not worthy. There's so much love for you in the chat already. It's an absolute pleasure to be here. Guys in the chat, get your questions in. We will do super chat questions if we can kind of break up the segments. What we're going to try and do, we're going to start with Frank Clark telling us about his playing career at Forest, how it was like under the great man Brian Clough. We'll then talk about the management period where he took over from Forest and still holds a record, I believe, to this day. And then his role after that in Forest as chairman and ambassador and everything like that. So I think we've got to kick it off with our how do we say it? Our more senior member of the panel who can relive the days back then. But Anne, do you want to kick off with the first couple of questions with Frank on how it all started?
Yeah. Obviously, Frank, you played 457 games for Newcastle, your boyhood club. It must have been a wrench to leave them. What sort of made you pick Forest to come to? And could you have imagined winning the trophies you won? You know, league championships, European Cups, League Cups.
Well, answer for the last question first. No, I couldn't have done it. No. I played. I'd been there 12, 13 years at Newcastle, and I got a free transfer at the end of 74-75 season, right out of the blue. No inkling from it for it. No nonsense about telling you early that no that kind of thing. So I was absolutely devastated, really. And a few of the press lads were saying, "Don't worry about it. You'll get yourself fixed up with a big club with your record. You'll have no problem whatsoever." I was 31, I think, by then. And after about a month, I'd had two offers: one from Doncaster and one from Hartlepool, which wasn't exactly the sort of level that I was hoping to go to. And Brian had just got back from Mallorca. He'd been out there with the players, as was his wont at the end of the season. And a Northeast journalist told him I was available on a free, so he rang me, and we agreed to meet at a hotel on the A1. I was an hour late because my car broke down in the Tyne Tunnel, but he waited. And I walked in, he said two things straight away. He said, "I'm only signing you for two reasons. One, we've got no left backs in the club. And the other reason is you're cheap." Which wasn't quite what I wanted to hear, I'm hoping I'm going to get a big fat contract. But he made sure that my feet were firmly on the ground.
So was that the first time you'd met him, Frank?
Sorry?
Was that the first time you'd met him?
No, I actually played in his testimonial game at Sunderland. When he had to finish playing, Sunderland gave him a testimonial. The game was Sunderland playing against what you could loosely call an all-star 11, which consisted of the Newcastle United back four and one or two very talented players like Bobby Charlton and people like that. So I actually played in his testimonial, so I'd met him before, and obviously knew of him and knew of his reputation. So that was it. The things were sorted out very quickly. At that time, as you know, they were in the old second division, fairly average team. So I wasn't really looking at winning European Cups, that was for sure. So anyway, I signed and came down to Nottingham, moved the family down to Loudon. We lived in Loudon. Yeah. And the first 2 years the first year certainly was underwhelming. And then Peter Taylor joined in 76, I think. and things started to happen then. John Robertson started to look like the player he could become, and they brought one or two better players in, Peter With, Larry Lloyd, people like that. We managed to sneak promotion. We did sneak promotion. We finished third, which today would have meant we'd have had to play in the playoffs, but that didn't work in those days. And then we were in the Premier League, and the first season in the Premier League was just incredible. I mean, I don't think anybody at the club outside of Brian and Peter thought that we would actually finish and win the league in that first season.
What were the expectations, Frank, at the start of that year? Was it a case of, as they do in the modern day of age, kind of trying to establish yourself in that division, or under Coffee?
That was never said. I mean, but most of the players felt that was, that would be the height of it, really. But they showed their men business. They brought Archie Gemmell in, and then they signed Peter Shilton. And I think Peter Shilton was how can I put it, the icing on the cake, really. Peter Shilton showed their great bravery as managers. Everybody in football in the world knew that Peter Shilton was a top class goalkeeper, but nobody else had the courage to go and pay £350, I think, or £375,000 for a goalkeeper.
They didn't used to do it in those days, did they?
No, but Peter Shilton was magnificent. I felt that for the time I was here with him, that he was probably the best goalkeeper in the world, and he obviously played a big part in the success of the team whilst he was there. So we
Frank, can I just take? Sorry.
Go on.
Sorry, can I just take you back a little bit, because it's a major point in Forest's development was when the difference from when Peter Taylor came and joined Brian. John McGovern's spoken about it, others have spoken about it, but how much of a difference did he make in terms of knitting it all together and the recruitment side of it? Because he was the main man to bring all these players in, wasn't he?
Well, Peter was the main recruitment man, yeah. But he just sparked Brian off as two individuals. They sparked each other off, he was a bit of a comedian, Peter, and Brian liked him because he made him laugh, which is, it's important when you're a football manager that you can laugh occasionally. And Peter had a good understanding of the game as well. Peter really was fairly instrumental in turning John Robertson a little bit of the way into that he became. I remember we went on a pre-season tour to Germany when Peter first came. We used to go to a place called Augsburg, just outside Munich, and play against second and third division German teams. A way of getting fit. And almost the first training session, Peter got laced into John Robertson and told him to get off the pitch and go back to the hotel, and he would sit down and talk to him. And subsequently, when they got back to the hotel, Peter got laced into John Robertson and accused him of wasting his talent, not being a good professional, just drifting through his life. And obviously John was a bit taken aback, to put it mildly. But right at the end, they said to him, "We're only telling you this because we think you can play." And that sentence sparked something in John's head. He'll tell you that now. And of course, the rest is history, So
maybe somebody like, sorry, Frank. Maybe somebody like Jadon Sancho could have done with that sort of treatment, rather than being sent on holiday for 3 months.
Well, I mean, I don't know the detail of that, but yeah. So that John took that to heart, and obviously had a fantastic career. And Peter just lifted Brian's spirit. It can be a lonely job being a manager. You need good people around you that you can trust. And there were some with Brian. Jimmy Gordon he was his sort of right-hand man, and Liam O'Kane and Alan Hill, people like that. They were good staff, but Peter was him and Peter were like very, very, very close.
Yeah.
And he did make Brian better at that time.
Yeah.
You know, and obviously, as you know, we won the title. I didn't play all that many games. I got injured, I think, in the 4th or 5th game at Arsenal. And Colin Barrett went to left back, and Colin had never played left back. Colin had come as a right back stroke centre back, really. But we only had about 15, 16 players. So when I got injured, they put Colin into left back, and Colin was terrific, you know, did ever so well there. So really, I struggled to get back in. I was very lucky, and every time a cup final came around, somebody was injured, and I managed to get a game, you know, like the league.
That's the way to do it.
The first League Cup final and the second League Cup final. I mean, I played in both of those. And obviously the European Cup final itself. By that time, Colin had got a really serious injury that kind of ruined his career. So yeah, you know, I went on and on and on. And we won the first division. People said they'll blow up. You know, they can't keep this going. But we did with about 16 players. And the following season, we got the European Cup, and we were all just checking our passports, making sure that we got, you know, that we've got passports that we can go off to some exotic country somewhere, and we get drawn against Liverpool.
Yeah, Liverpool. Yeah.
In the first game, which is a bit of a downer, but we managed to deal with them. Again, thanks to Colin's, mainly to Colin's second goal, which made the tie up there a lot easier than it might have been. By the way, Colin was injured between the two legs, and my first game in the first team that season was the second leg up at Liverpool. So that was a bit of a baptism of fire. But we managed to get through.
I was at that game, Frank. I was at that game, the Liverpool away game. Absolutely incredible. Absolutely incredible.
Yeah, and we went on and you know, and won that. Beat some good teams. Cologne in the semi-final. Cologne, new winning team from Germany. We managed to beat them, and we won the game. You know, we won the final. The final was a bit of a letdown, to be honest. A bit of an anticlimax. It wasn't a great spectacle, but if you look back on European Cup finals and Champions League finals, very few of the games are outstanding games. They come at the end of a long, hard season. There's an amazing amount at stake on the game. So most of them tend to be a bit underwhelming, and that one certainly was. And Malmo weren't a particularly talented team. They were very well organised, made it very difficult for us, but they're never going to beat us. There's no way would they beat us. We weren't going to score many goals. We were a bit lucky just to we got one, and maybe should have had one or two more. But yeah, so we won the game. I was looking forward to the next season, really. I hadn't made any plans about my future at all. We were very happy down here in Nottingham. And I got a call from somebody, a friend asked me to go and work with them at Sunderland, and you won't want to go into that, but that's why I left. I retired then, and I never played again, never played another game after Malmo.
What a way to go out. What a way to go out.
Last game, yeah.
It was. I mean, it was. I didn't plan that, obviously, but it was, yeah.
That was going to be my question.
Because...
Go on,
go on. No, I was going to say, because obviously it was just such a progression. You can't even call it a roller coaster. It was just all the way up, wasn't it? League Cup finals, winning the championship, and then winning the European Cup. When did it ever sink in, or did you just not have time to really appreciate what you were achieving at the time?
I think that was a bit of that, yeah. We were playing, certainly once we got into the Premier League, we were playing like 2 games a week every week. Saturday midweek, Saturday, 3 games a week. And you're right, you don't really get a lot of time to kind of sit back and appreciate it. And obviously the two of them made certain that there was no complacency creeping in anywhere. So, no, it was just a matter of, here comes another game, let's be ready for it and go and try and win it.
It was the same for the fans, you know, Frank. We were the same. We just got that used to winning. You know, we just expected it. And even that, there's a bit of an echo, even that 3-0 home match against Cologne, I can remember it so clearly coming out of my mates saying, oh, you know, we're drawn. It's all right, we'll just win in Cologne. That was how the fans felt as well. So confident.
Yeah. I've just got a couple of questions that I want to bring in from the chat, Frank, before we move on to the next section. So there's about 4 or 5 questions here. If we do them as kind of quick fire ones, it'd be fantastic. Brett's asking, what was it like playing behind Robo?
Well, Robo was fantastic for me, because he was very, very courageous on the pitch. No matter how tough the game was, or how well he was playing or how well he wasn't playing, he would always want the ball. Always looking for the ball, always making a position for himself to get it. And that suited me down the ground, you know. The quicker I could get rid of it to him, the better. And because I was primarily a defender. I had no illusions about being an attacking left back. So I used to just give him the ball and back him up and let him get on with it. He was terrific for me.
Did he track back at all?
Well, yes, he did. Not in the accepted sense that I know what you're talking about of chasing fullbacks back, but he would get back into a position, a defensive position that would make it difficult for the other team, you know. And I think I helped him a little bit with that. I used to move him around a little bit when we didn't have the ball. But he was just a brilliant footballer, absolutely top class. And he was such a threat on the ball that not many fullbacks were bombing on past him, even when they had the ball, you know. They were too worried about what he was going to do.
Yep, fantastic. And then next question we got is from Jeff. He says, thank you, Frank, for joining the stream. There's about 250 already in here. Show your respect to the great man by hitting that like, please do. And he says, was there a favorite position on the pitch you would have liked to have played but never got the opportunity to?
I wouldn't have minded being a centre forward, really. I actually did play centre forward for half a game for Forest, and I've got to tell you, scored a goal.
1 goal, yeah.
Is that the game you scored your goal in?
Yeah, but that's another story. You know, we were away we played Ipswich, and it was a Tuesday night after we'd won the league. After the game, you know, we drew 0-0 at Coventry, which meant we'd won the first division title. About 3 or 4 days later, we played Ipswich in the league at Portman Road, and we'd been celebrating quite heavily, obviously winning the league. They were playing in the FA Cup final the following weekend. And I was sub. Now, I remember in those days, there was only one sub. So there were 11 players and one sub, and I was a sub. And the first half was pretty poor, really, a real scrappy game. And Brian went absolutely berserk in the dressing room at half-time. He didn't go berserk very often, but he certainly went berserk that day. Most of the players were sensible enough to keep their heads down, but Peter Wyeth, who always had a lot to say for himself, decided to speak up. And that was like the red rag to the bull. So Brian told him in some kind of colourful language, get your kit off and get in the bath, get in the shower, you're off. Pointed at me and said, you get warmed up, you're going on. All right. So I'm warming up in the dressing room and I'm looking around and I'm thinking, what's he going to do here? I'm thinking, well, I think Ian Bowyer was playing left back that night. I'm saying, oh, you'll put me to left back and tell Ian to go and play up front. So anyway, I'm warming up and the time's going on and the bell goes and he still hasn't said anything. So I said to him, boss, where do you want me to play? He said, go and play centre forward. You can't be any worse than him in there. So the lads all burst out laughing, believe it or not. So we went out and the game kicks off. And they had a big centre half called Alan Hunter. Remember big Alan Hunter playing for Ipswich? Well, you young lads won't remember.
Yeah.
He was an Irishman, Irish international. And his cousin was a goalkeeper called William McFall, who I played with in at Newcastle, so I knew him vaguely. So I thought I'll chat to him quickly. So I said, walked up to him, whispered in his ear. I said, "Listen, you've got a cup final on Saturday. So if you promise not to kick me, I won't kick you." He looked at me.
Because in those days, defenders used to kick players, didn't they?
Yeah, he wasn't sure how to take it. But anyway, the game went on, and we got a corner. Now these days, all you see, the teams have all got rehearsed positions, and everybody knows where they've got to stand. We never did any of that at Forest. We just expected John Robertson to put the ball down, hit somebody's head in the box, and score. So I'm standing in the box, 18-yard line, and I don't know 18-yard box, and I don't know where to go. I've never been there before for a corner. One of our corners. I'm looking a bit embarrassed, really. Anyway, it takes a corner and it drops to my feet about 5 yards down and smashed it in the net. And a lap of honour, Cliffy and Taylor were up off the bench. So that was my career as a centre forward. I quite fancied this, but I never got the chance again.
Do you remember it now?
It sounds like he did better than David James when Stuart Pearce put him on as centre forward. It sounds like he did better than him,
yeah.
That's a great strike rate. One game, one goal. I'd love that.
Yeah, not bad.
You can retire with that. You can retire happy with that.
Sorry?
You can retire happy with a strike rate. One game up front and one goal.
Yeah. So that was my career as a striker anyway.
We got one more question on this section for you, Frank. It comes from James. I thought I'd bring this one up as a fun one. What was Cluffy's opinion on your moustache, Frank? Did you? Because he liked to.
Listen, he never mentioned it. I mean, I had it when I came here. I grew it when I was playing in Newcastle in '72, I think it was, or '3. I got kicked in the face on Boxing Day. And I had about 25 stitches in my face, and a lot of them were across there, So it made shaving very, very difficult.
Yeah,
and at that time, of course, with the Beatles and the Stones and all, and everybody had a moustache and long hair. So I just grew it and kept it for years. Like, then I got bored with it. My wife said, "Makes you look old, get rid of it." But Cluffy never really mentioned it. Not too sure how he would be with tattoos these days, but he never mentioned the moustache.
Fantastic. We've got a super chat here from Jordan Laws of the 199. Thank you so much, Jordan. Hey, boys, hope you all good. We are fanboys right here. I'm not gonna lie to you guys in the chat, and I'm sure Anne and Ez will agree with me. I mean, this is Frank Clark, ladies and gents. What an absolute
the Frank Clark.
The Frank Clark, yeah. Should we kick it off into the second section, Ez?
Yeah. So Frank, I want to talk about the period of time where I remember you from, and also just before we even start, just to thank you for giving me the best period of my life supporting Forest and giving me the opportunity to hold my head up high in school because I was in my teens when you took over as Forest manager. But leading into it, it was a moment that shook football, wasn't it, for Brian Clough to retire? And we, as Forest fans, really didn't know how to take it. Now, there was a few rumours. If you're able to do so, but the rumour was that when Clough retired, that he lined you up to be the replacement. Is there any truth in that? Or is there any truth in that you were in the pipeline anyway to take over at some point?
No, there was no truth in that. Brian did it once go public and said about me taking over from him.
Oh, Frank,
come back.
He's not run out of charge, has he?
Ez, you had to ask him that question, didn't you, Ez?
He's not sharing your internet, is he, Ez?
I hope he hasn't lost charge on his laptop or on his
it looks
iPad.
Suspiciously like that.
Yeah, that's what I'm fearing.
Are you going to message him?
Wolfie will try and contact him.
Yeah, if you just bring some of the messages up.
Yeah, guys, you've been amazing. Yeah. Thank you for all jumping in and giving your love and your questions as well. But he's an absolute hero for mine, and just give me a shout. I mean, I was 13, 14 years old when we had that season in the third place season in the Premier League. So give me guys a rough idea what age you were if you did live through that, because yeah, I absolutely love
by
it.
the book
I'll
I
never
wasn't
forget
born
that.
as, but I kind of, I kind of remember that era, and it was what you just said there was exactly how it felt, especially going into school in that era. Liverpool, Man U, every other person, that's who they supported, and going in, especially that year we got up, and I'll never forget the 2-1 at Old Trafford. That's
I was
that's
there.
one of the best memories I have, and yeah, we know you were there, you got the tickets, but then going into school that next day, that was the magic for it.
School.
Like,
Hey,
welcome back, Frank.
I'm not sure what happened there. My
yeah,
wife
there's
don't
worried
think-
there.
Yeah, and me, don't worry about that. I'm back anyway. Sorry. No, Brian.
Yeah, go on.
When I was managing Leyton Orient, I was having a hard time most of the time actually, and he came out one day saying this about me taking over from him, and that was just a typical attempt from him to help me really keep the job. But he didn't think He didn't think I'd be a manager. He told me I was too soft and too nice to be a manager. I'll tell you the story of what happened and how I got it. I knew that he'd gone, obviously. And at the time, I was the managing director at Leyton Orient and had been for a few years. And I was really enjoying doing that. And I got a call from Fred Reacher, who was the chairman. And I knew Fred. Fred was on the board when I was a player. And he said, I'll try and remember. Can you hear me all right?
Yeah.
It's a little quiet, Frank.
Yeah, a little quiet.
Just speak up just a little bit, yeah.
I'll try and remember what he said. There's someone here somewhere. Oh, let's turn it down. Right, that's better?
That's fantastic.
Yeah,
Right.
brilliant.
He said, now then, Frank. Oh, yeah, I said, yeah, I'm good, Fred. He said, you've heard that Brian's gone? I said, yeah, I saw that, Fred. What a shame, eh? He said, listen, he said, you wouldn't help me out, would you? He said, I've been turned down by 5 people and I'm desperate to get somebody for the job. Would you have it like
Wow.
I said, well, thank you for that vote of confidence, Fred. But I took the job anyway.
Frank, do you know who was turned down or who turned Forest down at that time? Were there any names?
Are you allowed to share
I have
that?
no idea. No, he didn't tell me any names. No. I do believe he spoke to Martin O'Neill. Martin has said that in his book. If you read Martin's book that he came out about a year ago, he said he had an interview for the job. And he came up with some strange theory about Fred had said that could him and I work together. This is before he'd spoken to me. I don't think Martin was very sure about that, and neither was I. But I did nothing about that, so obviously nothing ever came to that. The rest of the names, I have no idea who they were. But yeah, so they offered me the job, and the first board meeting, they said, we don't want to hear any stupid stories about consolidation and messing about. We don't want any messing about. We want to be back in the Premier League straight away. And the other thing is, there's no money to spend on players. I said, okay, that's handy. But you will be able to spend any money you bring in. And obviously there was a difficult situation at the club we had 3 internationals all looking to go. Roy Keane, Nigel Clough, Stuart Pearce, and
Who else?
I've forgotten his name now. The right back who went to Derby.
Oh, Lee Charles.
Charles.
Not Lee Charles.
Gary Charles.
Gary Charles.
Gary Charles,
Gary
Charles, yeah.
The 4 of them. So,
Yeah, he had a rough time at Forest, Gary Charles did.
So, So I knew that I couldn't keep Roy because Roy had Roy been given a clause in his contract the previous year, which said if the club got relegated, he could leave for 3.5 million, and he would get 10% of the fee. So
Frank, was he always keen on going? I know he had that release fee clause, but even without that, do you think he would have still gone?
Well, yeah, he would, because Manchester United were coming in for him, weren't they?
Yeah.
And we were going to be playing in the championship. There was no way we could have kept it. So that was okay. I had a chat with him. I thought it was quite amicable, really. And I said to him, listen, you know, I understand the clause and I understand that you're going to go. As soon as a club speaks to our chairman and offers them the fee, you can talk to them and off you go, like, you know. But I said, if you want to come in and train, that's fine, but you'll be training with the youngsters and the reserves, because you're not going to be part of the first team picture. And he was okay with that. Typical Roy came in, his attitude and training for a couple of 2 or 3 weeks was fantastic. Trained really well, and then Man United came in, agreed to pay 3.5, and off he went. Nigel was different, obviously, but as you know, there'd been some conflicts between 1 or 2 members of the board and his father. So there was no way he was going to stay either. So Fred did a great deal with Liverpool and got a good fee for him. Gary came to see me and explained that, as you all know, he'd had a tough time back in Nottingham the previous season, and he said, I have to get away, preferably out of these Midlands. And I said, yeah, that's fine, I understand that, son. And he went to Derby. That's probably.
Anyway, he used to get a lot of stick off the Forest fans, didn't he?
He got really far, didn't he?
Yeah.
And Stuart, obviously, I knew I fought very, very hard to keep Stuart at the club line. It was really difficult. He was worried about his England place. Not sure about me. Not sure where the club was going to go. So I spent a long time talking to him. But fortunately, managed to persuade him to stay.
It's quite interesting, Frank, because we did an evening with Stuart Pearce a couple of months ago, and it's exactly what you said. The England thing was the utmost importance to him.
Yeah.
And once he got those assurances, I think it was Graham Taylor in charge, wasn't it? At the time, he said to us he felt really settled in Nottingham. Yes, it was we're going down to the champion, or what was it called back? Division 1.
It's first division, I think. First. Yeah.
And he said once he'd got that assurance, he felt like he was settled and kind of ready to go on. I mean, he then got booked 30 seconds into the first game.
I think that's true. You know, I helped to get him the reassurance. And my my grandson has just come in here. Hello.
Oh, bless.
Hey. How old is he?
Does you want to come and say hello?
My daughter. Sorry.
That's okay.
No.
He said to me, you know, he explained to me that he was worried about his England place. I spoke to Graham, and Graham was fine about it. He said, listen, if he's playing well, he'll get picked. It doesn't matter which division he's in, you know. So that was a big plus, because Stuart was very good for me as a captain. He was a real leader in the dressing room, you know. And then with the money that came in, the first player we bought was Colin Cooper, who I knew very well. I knew very well from my time in London because he'd been at Millwall.
Right, yeah.
And I think we paid 1.5 million for him. And I remember we did the deal in a hotel in London, myself and Alan Hill, with the Millwall secretary. So we spent £1.5 million, and I'm sat there and I'm a bit gobsmacked because I've never spent more than 5,000 at Orient, you know. Typical Alan says, "Come on, let's go and ring Big Jobson and get the deal done with Collymore." You know, I thought, "Oh, Alan, give me a couple of days to come back down to earth." But anyway, we rang Vic Jobson, and I knew Vic Jobson very well. In fact, he'd offered me a job a couple of years previously, and that was quite hard negotiation. But we managed to get that done and got Stan signed, and then we got Des Little to come and play right back. I knew Des. He'd played against it at Orient a couple of times, and he'd always impressed me. And we went on from there. I think I signed Tommy Wright as a goalkeeper because I was worried about Crossley at the time. Because I'm sure you remember that Crossley was having a bit of a bad time with the crowd.
Yeah. We spoke to him. Yeah.
He was getting booed in the warm-ups, and I thought, well, we can't have this. This is not doing us any good at all. So I signed Tommy Wright, not for a lot of money. And then the last piece of the jigsaw really was Lars Bohinen and David Phillips. David Phillips.
Yeah. So underrated.
When they came in, I was able to set the team up the way I really wanted it to be. And
because Frank, Lars came in a bit later on, didn't he? Kind of October, November time. Because there was no transfer.
Probably October time. Yeah. I'm sure you remember we didn't start very well.
No, it was a shocking start, wasn't it?
In fact, the natives were very restless. We were, 8th, 9th, 7th, 8th, 9th bottom. We had a few injuries. Stan had got an injury, and Colin got an injury, and we didn't have a lot of depth in the squad. And it was taking us a while to get.
It didn't even start well. The first game was Southend, wasn't it? And like within a minute, we were behind. If I remember rightly.
The first game,
against Southend, yeah.
Is that the one where Crossley split his head open?
Yeah. And Stan didn't play. He had a virus.
No, he didn't.
So he said anyway. So he didn't play in that game. And it was a tough old game. It was a real battle. And we got a point. I was quite happy with that. It was a good start, but the ensuing couple of months were quite difficult. And then I was able to get Lars and do what I wanted to do with the team and put David Phillips back as central midfield and Steve Stone out wide on the right. And go from there. And that was the team more or less.
By the way, Frank, we saw Des Little the other day. He looks exactly the same.
One of the big things about that first season, we didn't get many injuries. If you look at teams who are maybe it's not so much now with a big squad in that, but we didn't have much of a squad. There wasn't much in the academy coming through at the time.
Could we borrow the medical staff for our team now? Because they could use a bit of help.
Dan missed a few games. Sorry?
I was going to say, could we re-recruit that medical team? Because we've had a few injuries in the more recent seasons, haven't we?
Did I recruit the medical team?
No. Are they still available for Forest now?
No. The physio that we had, Graham Lyas really wasn't a football man. He was an NHS physio. And at the end of the first season, I didn't think that he was up to what being the kind of physio I wanted to be. So he left, and I brought in a bloke called John Hazelden, who had been a coach as well as being a physio. He was very, very good, and he died unfortunately quite recently. But we didn't have massive medical teams in those days. We had a physio, and we had a club doctor, and the club doctor was a bloke called Lynn Jarrett, who worked at the Queen's Med. Lovely, fantastic bloke, great doctor. He actually has a ward at the Queen's Med named after him. That's how much how highly he was held down there. And that was the extent of the middle of the team. We didn't have a team of physios and a team of physiologists and all psychiatrists and all that kind of thing. So
didn't you have drones and stuff, Frank? Didn't you have drones going over the players' training and millions of pages of data? Didn't you have all them?
In those days. The bloke who talked a load of crap. No, we had nothing like that. No.
It was interesting, Frank, because the team wasn't as big as Forest have got like 42 on the books now. I can't imagine it was anywhere near that size. The team was quite small, and it's really important that we kind of kept those injuries down. But as you were saying, we didn't start that great. Was the expectations changing? Because it was then we went on a nice run, didn't we? But were you worried in that period where the slow start happened, or had you kind of pieced the jigsaw in your mind once Lars had come in and everything you knew it was going to click?
Well, I was concerned, obviously. You know, like if you're in the results business, it doesn't matter what the plans you've got and all and how well you're playing either, really. But it's about results. So obviously, I was concerned, not particularly worried, but concerned about it. I just felt that if I could get the right people in the right positions, we'd be fine, you know. Because initially, David Phillips came in playing wide on the right, and Steve Stone was playing in the middle, and I didn't think that was right. I wasn't happy with that. I didn't think it suited. I didn't think it was making best use of either of them. So with the Lars coming in, it enabled me to change those two around, you know, and that was how I wanted to play. I wanted to have a sitting midfield player, and it's quite difficult to play that. You've got to have a lot of self-discipline, you know. That you don't want to be running around chasing the ball. You've got to hold that position in front of the back four. And Dave Phillips was at the perfect time of his career to come in and do that, you know.
Made a big difference.
You know, so once we got that set up, I mean, we didn't have that many. You know, we had. I mean, Scott Gemmell was a very good player who could come into midfield. Robert Rosario could do a job up front with Stan, Lee Glover. So we had you know, maybe 5 or 6 more professionals who you'd be quite happy putting in the team if necessary.
Did we have Jason Lee that season as well, Frank? Did we have Jason Lee that promotion
we did.
season?
Yeah, and Jason, of course. Yeah, I'm going to say I wasn't sure when I signed him, but I obviously signed him before then because he played it in the game at Peterborough, didn't he? Or he came on as sub, I think, in the game at Peterborough. So yeah, Jason was there. Jason was a good player for us, or he was until those 2 idiots on television started taking the mickey out of him. He wasn't the most skillful, but he was, you know, he was very physical and he was a great team player.
Honest player, wasn't he?
And that's
Do you think that David Phillips is one of the most like underrated and unsung heroes of that era? Because I absolutely thought he was magnificent.
Yeah, he might have been unsung. You're right. I mean, he wasn't underrated by me or by the other players. But I know what you're saying. But that role he was playing is a kind of role where you can be like an unsung hero, you know. Because he's not flying around chasing the ball and all that and running up and down and all that kind of thing. But no, he was. Yeah, that'll be a fair comment. That.
Frank, can I just ask? Something that's always fascinated me is how recruitment was done. I mean, I'll be honest with you, I don't know if these boys knew him or not, but when we signed Lars Bohinen, I knew nothing about the guy, you know, until you started seeing him play, and then you were like, wow. How did that work for you? Did you have, like they have in this day and age, a recruitment team, a director of football, etc., or was the recruitment on your shoulders back then?
The recruitment was all on my shoulders. I brought all those players in myself, but I was helped by Alan Hill, especially, who official title was my assistant manager, but he did a lot of the scouting for me as well. And we had a few part-time scouts, people like the late Mick Rayner and people like that who went around scouting for us. But Lars was brought to our attention, or brought to Alan's attention, by his agent, who had done some work with Brian, I think, in the years previously. And so we went out to watch him in Norway. And we took them from there, you know. So, but I was responsible for all the recruitment. We didn't have directors of football or anything like that. But we had people who scouted for us, you know. But
did you find it hard to juggle your time? Because you're obviously focusing on what's going on the pitch. You're looking at, you know, tactics. I'm sure on a personal level, you've got to spend time with the players and get to know, you know, them inside out. Was there a lot going on? Did you ever get time kind of just to be you?
No, there wasn't a lot of that. It was very hands-on. But listen, in contrast to how it had been at Leyton Orient, it was paradise. At Leyton Orient, there was me, the physio, and a lovely old fella who'd been on the staff for donkey's years looking after the kids, and that was it.
Wow.
So I mean, I was working 80-hour days down in Lake Norrin, because in those days the football combination, the reserve league in London, used to play a lot of the games in the afternoons. So I'd be taking training in the morning, watching a game in the afternoon, and go watch another game at night, trying to find players for free and that for nothing, you know. It was just ridiculous. So Forest was almost a bit of a holiday. Well, not quite, but it was certainly compared to that. But it was full on. But there was nowhere did you have this kind of support staff that they have now. You just had to get on.
And were you doing the coaching, as 1865 said there? Were you doing the kind of training and the coaching sessions as well?
Yeah, Liam O'Kane was the first team coach, and I brought in a fitness. I brought in a fitness coach. That was a thing that was different. When I got the job at Forest, I wanted to obviously hit the ground running, you know, and make an impression. And I just thought we needed something different from Brian's approach. And I knew this fitness trainer. I'd employed him at Lake Norrin for a couple of years when I was a managing director, and I'd watched him work, and I liked his ideas. So I brought him in, and for 3 years he was fantastic. He was how can I put it? He was hard work. He could cause a riot in an empty house, but he was very good at what he did, and it was different. It was different to what the Forest players had been used to, and it took us a while to persuade the players that this was the right way to go. That might have had something to do with if he started, you know. And there was a bit of muttering about it in the dressing room. So we decided. You might have heard this story before. There's the Griffin pub in not Keyworth, the next village down. There's now a restaurant. Then it was a pub, and Alan Hill knew a lot of people at Publicans. And the guy who ran it, they had a big room upstairs, nice big room that they used for functions. He said we could have the room, so we took the whole playing staff to the Griffin, fish and chips, few drinks, beers, glass of wine, and all that, and had a real thrash it out session. Like, you know, come on, you know, what's the matter with you? Anybody's got any questions about the training, about anything? What, you know? And it was a really good day, and we never looked back really from then on. So you could put it down to fish and chips, you know. Simple as that.
It's so simple and yet so effective, isn't it? To do things like that rather than go around the houses and everything. You know?
Yeah.
Exactly. Just got a couple of super chats just to bring in very quickly. Chris with the 12-month membership, thank you so much. Frank, if you could, who would you sign today, Frank? He says to you, who's your favorite player in this current era?
I don't know. I think I might be tempted. I would go for Mbappe.
Yeah.
Morgan Gibbs White. Morgan Gibbs White.
On a more sensible levels, I mean, I think England could win this next championship coming up if Kane and Bellingham stay free.
Yeah,
they're world-class players. Those two, I think. We've got some decent players, some good players. Rice and people like that are good players, but Bellingham and Kane are world-class. If you said who could you sign, you know, unlimited, I'd certainly go for those two.
Fantastic.
Yeah, I'd kind of love to see Bellingham in that Forest midfield. It would be quite nice.
I don't know if he'd get in. Jordan with the 199. My granddad told stories about you all the time. Love hearts over to Frank Clark as well. Interesting one here from Mark Frank. He says, ask Frank if he can remember the N1 FFC play on that big beamer.
I can remember it. I don't know who had it, but it certainly was one I saw around occasionally. Was it?
I always assumed it was Jack. I always assumed it was the chairman.
No, it wasn't. It might have been one of the vice presidents or something like that, I think. or the shareholders. You know, at that time we had 250 shareholders.
Yeah.
Or something like that, 215 maybe. They all had one share. And that included the members of the board. They all only had one share each. Which meant that
we were the only club, weren't we?
Sorry?
We were the only actual club because it was shares. It was only those shares.
Yes. Yeah.
We were the only club that had that situation. Yeah. That's why it was sometimes difficult to get things done.
Oh yeah, it wasn't a very good way of working. You know, it meant that the board member, nobody on the board was going to put any money in the club at all. Nobody ever did. And this all the time Brian brought all that success. Nobody put money into the football club. It was all done on the money generated by the club players.
Yeah, and an overdraft, wasn't it, with the bank as well? I remember.
Well, they had an overdraft at the bank. It was quite when I came, it might have been about 6-7 million, I think, and that was secured on the value of the playing staff.
Yeah,
that was secured on the value of the playing staff because you had no nothing to
no assets.
No assets. They didn't own the ground. And of course, when the Bosman ruling came in 1995, that blew that out of the water because it meant that
must have been so scary.
And could walk away for nothing. So the bank got very, very nervous about that.
Exactly.
And that was one of the big problems I had in my last season here, half season here. The club were under the board were under massive pressure from the bank to get the overdraft down, and Irving Corner was the chairman by then, kept coming in and telling me I've got to sell somebody, and I would say, fine, I'm not stupid. If you're telling me I have to sell somebody, who would you like me to sell? Like, would you like me to sell Pierce or Cooper? Oh no, we can't sell any of them now. I'm saying, well, who's gonna buy our reserve team player? Nobody's gonna buy them. And it just got it very.
Brady was decent.
And that's why they decided that they had to go out and seek a different way of running the club, like, you know. And to be fair, that didn't work out very well, but that wasn't their fault, like, you know.
Yep. Frank, I want to get on to my favorite season, which is obviously the year we came up, and what a year that was. I guess we have to get out of the way. I'm sure you get asked it a lot, but Stan Collymore. I'll hand it over to Ant because he's the biggest fan there, but specifically just a quick section on Stan Collymore because the chat know about him. Well.
Very, very briefly, Frank. For me, Stan. I mean, I've been there all through the glory years, as you can probably tell. Both sets of glory years. But for me, Stan's the best player I've ever seen. I mean, I absolutely idolise the guy. I always say he's the only guy I've seen where he'd get the ball in his own penalty box and people would stand up and say, "Go on, Stan! Go on, Stan!" But obviously, exactly, yeah. But obviously, he was a bit of a maverick as well. He was a bit of a lad as well. There are rumours that he was. Did you find him difficult to handle on a professional basis, or, you know, in around the dressing room?
Yes, he was a problem. But you're right what you say about him. He was a fantastic player, one of the most talented players I've ever come across. Should have had a barrel full of England caps. Absolutely, but hasn't
and he got
done
two, didn't he?
All in his career. He got one, I think, two, I think. One.
Yeah.
And I met him a few years after he left, and I said to him, "Stan, you know, how do you regret it?" Like I said, you know, you've got more talent in your little toe than I've got in my whole body. I've got a cupboard full of medals. You've got nothing. You've not won anything, you know. He said, "Yeah, but I've got millions in the bank."
Financially, it's all right.
It's a fair answer, you know.
It's a stud answer.
Listen, I'm not a trained psychologist or anything like that, so I might be talking rubbish here. But Stan had a very, very difficult upbringing. I wasn't aware of it at the time. You know that after he left us, he suffered with severe depression.
Yeah.
He was brought up in Cannock, a mixed race parents. Which I would imagine in Cannock in the 70s, 80s would be a very difficult place to grow up in, like, you know. And he was very suspicious of people he didn't know. He had a group of friends back in Cannock that had happened. He lived there all the time. He wouldn't move when he signed for us, and but he just found it very difficult to trust people he didn't know. And he was never the most popular for the players. They did not like him, but he was very difficult for anyone to get close to. Because he lived in Cannock, he never socialised with him. And for I mean, he was a wonderful athlete. For a man with his wonderful physique and great athleticism, he hated training.
Really?
If he knew we had a hard training session coming up, he would do everything he could to avoid it. Like, I mean, he didn't come in one day, and he rang in and said he had to go to his mother's funeral, his grandmother's funeral, which is fair enough. If it's, you know, we're not morons. If it's a funeral, all right. So Alan Hill, being Alan Hill, such a lovely guy, Alan, he sent a big bunch of flowers to Stan's mother. And but a week later, he got a call from Stan's mother. Alan, the flowers are lovely, but why did you send them? And Alan said, well, you know, we'd heard about your mother. And we went, she said, my mother died 10 years ago. But I had a laugh like that. But he was, he was difficult. But I tell you what I did. I had a senior group of very, very good professionals. Pierce, Chettle, Cooper, and Phillips, who were very experienced and sensible lads. And they were my, what you would call, leadership group in the dressing room. And so I used to keep really close to them about Stan, because Stan used to get away with a little bit. You know, I used to have a theory when I was playing, and when I was younger and stupid, that everybody at the football club should be treated the same. That's nonsense, like. If you've got £1 million player with you in your dressing room and he's a bit of a maverick, you have to find ways of dealing with him without upsetting the dressing room and the rest of the players, you know. And that's the problem all along that I had with Stan. And Liam O'Kane was a big help to me. I used to get mad with him, and I'd get an envelope with a bloody fine in it, and Liam would come in and say, no, Gaffer, put it in the drawer. The lads know all about it. Don't worry about it. You'll win us the game on Saturday. You know? And more often than not, you did. But those four lads were a big help to me in that respect, you know.
Yeah, because we asked Pierce that, both Pierce and Mark Crosley, when we interviewed them, and they were absolutely fine with it. They were like, we were the ones telling Frank, just don't worry about it. He'll go win us the game. And they gave him a lot of rope, didn't they?
Yeah, they did. I mean, and the messages came a lot through Liam from that group of players and people like Crossley, like, you know. And it worked.
Well, he used to ensure their win bonuses, didn't he? So
well, yeah, absolutely. I mean, you know, you're saying he could pick the ball up on the edge of our box and go and score. He did that a couple of times. I mean, I saw him do it once at West Brom. It was the most amazing goal I think I've ever seen in my life. Like, we got the ball from a throw-in on the edge of our box, and nobody else touched it. So the goalkeeper picked it out the back of the net, and that was going to drop him for that game.
As well, like that.
For that game, because I caught him walking around outside the hotel with his agent at 12 o'clock at night on a Friday night. But, so that was Stan. But then he got into the England squad, the 95, and they had if you remember, they had a tournament at Wembley as a dress rehearsal for Euro '96.
The Umbro Cup. The Umbro Cup.
England,
Yeah.
England played Brazil and Japan.
I remember. Yeah.
And Dan, Colin Cooper, Steve Stone, and Stuart Pearce were in the squad. And Terry was the manager, Terry Venable.
Yeah.
And they'd been together about a week, and I got a call from Terry. And I said, "Hi, Terry, how's it going?" He said, "Tell me about Collymore." He said, "Oh, I said, what's he done now?" Like, I said, "No, he hasn't done anything, but he walks around the place. It looks as though he didn't want to be here." This is a lad who 3 years ago was playing in Crystal Palace reserves, or even before that, like Robo in the England squad, and given that the impression that was the last place on earth he wanted to be. And that summed him up, He didn't really have any great ambition to be a top footballer. And he got his head turned by the Spice Boys at Liverpool.
Yeah.
But it wasn't just his fault. The board of directors let me down, actually. When I signed Stan, he didn't come on a big contract. He didn't have an agent. Didn't come for a lot of money. So I said, "Listen, do your stuff for us, and I'll look after you." Well, he did his stuff for us, didn't he? In that first season, he got us up. I went to the board and I said, "Oh no, we can't. I think he still had 2 years left, but we can't afford to do anything like that." And I'm saying, "Well, look, I promised him. I'm telling you, no, he won't go anywhere. We'll be all right." Of course, had his head turned by the Spice Boys, and by the time they realised it, which was almost towards the end of the next season, it was too late.
Too late.
I could have forced him to stay for another year, but it wouldn't have benefited anybody. We tried to persuade him not to go. All the players. We went to Australia at the end of the season, and all the players on that trip trying to persuade him not to go.
Yeah.
Before some of them had to come back for the international games, and Fred said to him, "We'll match what any club offers you money-wise. We'll match it." But his mind was made up, I've tried to explain to him, "Stan, you might not realise it, but the team is set up for you here.
Yeah.
It's set up. It's set up to get the best out of you, for you to go and show what you are." I said, "It won't be like that at Liverpool. It won't be like that at Liverpool. There's a lot of potential Stan Collymore up there, but he wouldn't have it." And off he went. And to be fair,
I feel fairly confident had he stayed at Forest, he'd have got a lot more than 2 caps for England, I'm sure.
I think so. But he wouldn't listen. To be fair, him and little last centre forward for Liverpool,
Fowler, Robbie Fowler.
Him and Fowler for a year were a fantastic pairing.
Yeah.
But then the problems started to outweigh the benefits, and Roy Evans couldn't cope with it, couldn't deal with it, so I'm not sure whether he would have got any international caps, because what you don't want to show to somebody like Terry Venable is that you don't want to be there. Terry's pretty hot, I would imagine, as we all would be. So he might not have done, but he certainly might have had a chance of winning something.
Yeah. Exactly.
But there you go. It was
and in that
wonderful
season,
years, I have to say, but it was a problem.
I'm just looking at the time, and we've already gone past 8. And I know we said no. Are you okay for another few minutes or so?
That's the trouble. Once I start talking, I can't shut up.
I mean, I'm sure the chat will agree. We could sit here all night. We're at your beck and call. Like, your time is when you tell us. But you're okay to go on for a few more minutes?
Yeah, go on. Yeah. If you want to talk about my time as chairman or anything like that.
Yeah, I just wanted to just touch on the European campaign, and I have to ask while I've got you on about Brian Roy. And the chat is saying, "Please, Frank, continue." They want me to go on. We got well over 300 in here. Please don't forget to like and subscribe. I've got to ask you about my all-time favorite player, Brian Roy.
Right.
He was just amazing for me. But what I found interesting was, like, I know the story of how you had to fly out and get him from America. But at that time, he was never really a kind of number 10 or an inside forward, was he? He was more a left winger. Where did you see that genius come from to push him into that position? How did that come about? Because initially it looked like he may come in to replace Woney.
Yep. Hey, great. That's great thinking. That was my thinking as well. Not to replace Ian, but just to give Ian a kick up the pants, because I always felt that Ian at that time was great talent, but was a bit lazy. And anyway, go right back to the beginning. We get promoted, and they go to the board in the summer and say, "How much money have I got to buy players?" Like, Oh no money. We can't buy. We can't afford to buy any players. Oh, Christ, man. So I'm sat in the office one day, moping around, and I get a call from an Italian agent that I knew, who had taken us on a great pre-season trip when I first came to the club. And he said, "What are you looking for?" Oh, I said, "I'm looking for a few players. We do need a bit of some talent to bring into the team. We've got a good team, but we just need a bit more." I said, I'm really looking for a left-sided attacker. My vision was to play Collymore up there on his own, and Roy and Stone, and a three-man midfield. So Ian might still be in the team. He said, "What, you mean somebody like Brian Roy?" I said, "Okay, come on, don't take the mickey, like, No, he said he's available. He was playing for a team called Foggia in Italy, who'd just been relegated, and they were desperate financial straits, and the only saleable asset they had was Brian, and he was going for 2.2.5, I think, million. And he said he'd be interested, Oh, I said, okay, I'll come back to you on that one. So I got hold of Fred Reacher, who was a great chairman for me, and I told him this, and I said, can't you see the lift he would give to everybody, that we're signing a World Cup player here, So Fred said, "Well, keep it quiet if you can, but run with it and see where it leads us, like, tell the rest of the board." So we did that, and came back and said, "Well, if you pay at 2.5 million, you can talk to him." And Fred said, "Yeah, we'll agree to pay it." So I agreed to pay it, and the agent said he was in the World Cup in America, '94, in the squad. So the coach, who's a friend of his agent, his own agent, will let him come out to meet you. Oh, great. So I jump on the plane, fly off to Miami, get off the plane. The agent's waiting for me, and he said, "I've got some good news and some bad news." I said, "I better have the bad news first." And he said, "The coach has changed his mind. He won't let him come out of the camp to meet you." I'm thinking, Christ, I've flown all this way and wasted time. Like, I said, "Well, what's the good news?" He said, "I've got you a seat on the Dutch officials' coach to the game they were playing that night in Miami. I've got you a seat on the coach, but get on the coach and go and sit up the back and keep your head down." So I get on the coach and I go up the back, and I'm sitting among all the players' wives, all the Dutch players' wives. I'm sitting next to Brian Roy's wife, aren't I? So I introduced myself and we chatted, and she was an aspiring actress. So she was a bit concerned about how far Nottingham was from London. She said, how far is it? And I'm thinking, be careful here now. I said, about 40 minutes. Well, that's not
in a jet.
Anyway, she didn't know what I get me, to be fair. So I went to the game, and you're right, he played as a left winger, and he wasn't very good on the night, I've got to tell you. But then I came back, and he still wanted to come, so we arranged for him to come over. And he was coming over on the day of the board meeting. And this bloody agent, who was a bit of a fox, leaked the story to the press that we were signing Brian Roy. And none of the board knew, like.
Oh, God.
None of them actually knew. So you can imagine the atmosphere when me and Fred walked into the boardroom. Like, what's this? We can't afford to pay. And I'm trying to look. Brian Roy, World Cup player. What will this do for our players and the supporters? That we're bringing a World Cup player here. Then we went round and round the table for about 2 hours. Eventually, we wore them all down to agree to it. Brian came and he signed. And then I very quickly realised that really he was a reluctant left winger, but he was a very, very good attacking player. And I just had a feeling that him and Collymore would be absolutely terrific together. And the other thing that convinced me was Ian Wong had looked at the situation like you have, and he's coming. He ain't going to get my place. And Ian Wong became a 20% better player. So
it's fabulous, wasn't he?
We decided to go like that and play Stan and Brian up there on their own and leave them to do their own thing, really. And that worked a treat for 12 months. Yeah.
Did you,
Frank?
sorry. Done as you go.
No, I was going to say, Frank, how easy were your team talks in that season? Was it just a case of get the ball to Brian and Stan and let them do the rest, or was there a bit more intricacy?
Well, I was never a great. Well, I never thought I was a great tactician. We used to discuss the opposition a bit more than Brian ever did, but not so much in how they played, just about free kicks and corners and that kind of thing. And the basic plan was as you say, to try and get the ball to them. But around that, I mean, people who saw us play would say we played 4-4-2.
Yeah,
well, that was true when we didn't have the ball. When people talk about shapes of football teams, they talk a load of rubbish, because you've got your team is in at least two different shapes, at least two during the game. Shape when you've got the ball, shape when you haven't. And when we had the ball, we had because of the players that we had a real freewheeling kind of style, where as soon as we got the ball, Stoney could make forward runs. Lars liked to get forward and attack. Piercy obviously did. And the only three who were restricted really were the two centre backs and David Phillips. And the rest could just go and join in and play. And as soon as we lost it, then we had to get back into two banks of four to defend, and just almost ignore Brian and Stan, because there's no way either of them were going to run their socks off chasing defenders off the ball. So it was a waste of time doing it, So we just had this two banks of four and left them to it, and it suited the players that we had. I mean, one of the things that I took from Brian, I knew myself instinctively. Don't ask people to do what they can't do.
Yeah.
Encourage them to do what they can do. With Brian, especially if you didn't, you got a bollogan. But as long as he never asked you to do something that you couldn't do, and that was my mantra there, really. I gave him a loose shape, let's say a 4-4-2, and then a more fluid shape, and let them go and show their own ability.
Yeah.
I could talk for hours more, Frank, but I do want to touch on your time as the chairman and the ambassador. Just before I do, I just got a couple of quick super chats just to bring up. 1865 Fred says, Frank, who was better, Lars or Morgan Gibbs White? Or were they similar? Would you say Lars and Morgan quite similar players?
Say that again, sorry.
Would you say Lars Bohinen and Morgan Gibbs White are quite similar in their styles?
Yes, I've never thought about that, but
Morgan runs a bit more.
Yeah, I think Morgan Gibbs is a bit more physical.
Lars had the better shot, definitely.
Yeah, Lars was a very good player. Yeah.
He's a good finisher.
Yeah, and just very good. Thank you so much for the £3 as well, Warren. You absolute legend. So I just want to move it on, Frank, into when you took over from Nigel as the chairman. How did that come about? Because it wasn't in great times, obviously for Forest then. Was it
Difficult.
something that you sort of seem to come when things are just being a little ropey in things?
Yeah.
Were you fifth choice, Frank? Were you fifth choice or sixth choice?
The chairman, no, I was only second.
Okay.
Listen, what happened was, I'm sure you all remember, Nigel had brought in Steve McLaren as manager. Remember that?
Yeah.
And Steve had a nightmare time. I think he'd been out of English football too long. He'd forgotten how physical the old second division was, or whatever it was called.
I don't think he had it even before.
And Nigel, who had done a fantastic job really for the club in terms of financial support, was getting terrible stick online from the supporters about it, because they were second bottom of the league, I think, at the time. And the final kind of nail was they played Birmingham at home. I was at the game actually, just watching the game.
I was.
And they lost 4-1, I think, something like that. And he got some real terrible stick. And he was a very sensitive kind of guy, Nigel. So he rang me. McLaren resigned, if you remember, on the day.
Yeah.
Resigned that day. To be fair to him, never asked for a penny in compensation or anything like that. Resigned. And so I got a call from Nigel the next Monday or Tuesday, asking me to would I be prepared to come in as a consultant, football consultant. So I'm thinking, I like the sound of that, like consultant. You go in and you consult you, tell them what to do, then you bugger off and it goes wrong and you're not there. Like, so I'll have a bit of that. Like, then 2 days later, he rang me again. He said, things have changed. He says, would you be prepared to come and be chairman? The bloke I had in line to be the chairman has decided he's not up for it. So would you have it? So, another vote of confidence. So yeah, and he was still financing the club at that time to the tune of £1 million a month. But he just wanted to step back from that, from the chairman firing squad, if you like, and I could run the club. I would make decisions. I could hire and fire, but we had to operate within the parameters of the budget that he'd set down, which was fair enough. So I had to go, and they appointed Steve Cottrell. They appointed Cottrell the day before I got the job, which I wasn't too happy about. Like.
Yeah.
But I just had to accept that, and it was difficult. We're a poor team, really poor team, man. And we had no money. We couldn't buy anybody. We couldn't spend a penny outside of the budget unless we traded, unless we sold somebody and changed them around that way. And we were really poor. And then, of course, the great tragedy of Nigel dying suddenly in early February. Obviously, a terrible personal tragedy for his family and that. But it was a disaster for the club as well, because we thought, myself, Mark, Arthur, and John Pelling thought we had a cast iron guarantee in place that from Nigel's estate, this £1 million a month would keep coming in. Because without it, we'd be trading illegally. And we still didn't have much of a team then. But the team improved. In this, I've jumped a bit. In the January, in the window, I heard a rumour that Leicester were going to sign Wes Morgan at the end of the season on a free, because Wes's contract with them. I mean, the club did some funny things with players' contracts. They let very good players get out of contract and lost them for free, like. And when I went in, Wes was very disillusioned. He'd been on the same contract for 5 years. He'd seen players come in and get bigger contracts, and nothing was ever done about his. So by the time I got to him, he was adamant he was going. He wasn't going to sign a new contract. Leicester, to be fair to them, came in January in the window and offered us £1 million for him, which was fantastic. So we took that money, the £1 million, and said to Steve, the manager, you can spend that on wages. You can't go and buy a player for £1 million, but that £1 million and Wes's wages as well, which are now off the thing, you can go and bring some loan players in with that money and use that to pay the wages till the end of the season.
Yeah.
And the players we brought in helped us enormously stay up. People like George Alakobi, you know, the lad who is now the Maidstone manager and got all the publicity of the weekend. He came in, 3 or 4 whose names I can't remember, but they came in and made us a better team, and they kept us were instrumental in keeping us up. The other major thing that happened before Nigel died was Patrick Bamford.
Yeah.
Yes.
When I came to the club, there was nobody at the club coming to me and saying, "Oh, you want to see this player we've got in the youth? What a player he is like." Nobody said that. And we played, I think it was Wigan in the Youth Cup at home. One of those Lancashire teams. And we beat them 8-0. And Bamford was magnificent. Scored 4 goals and was just incredible. That was the first time I'd seen him. And I said, what the hell? And his contract was expiring at the end of the year because he was 18, you know, he'd done his apprenticeship thing. Oh my God, what a player he is. The next round we were away to Southampton, who really fancied themselves with their youth team at the time. We beat them 4-0. If he'd been playing for them, they'd have won 4-0. So I'm thinking, oh, he's got problems now. Anyway, I talked to his father and his agent, trying to get him to sign a new contract. Wouldn't do it. And his father came to see me and said, I want to take Patrick Bamford around a number of Premier League clubs and look at their facilities. No, I said, not a chance. I said, unless he signs a new contract, which gives us a bit of protection, he ain't going anywhere. And if I hear that you've taken him to a Premier League club, I'll have you down in front of the FA so fast your feet won't touch the ground. You weren't very happy with that, obviously. About a week later, I got a call from Chelsea. About Patrick Bamford, lad. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Well, we'd give you $500,000 now and another $500,000 in 12 months' time. I said, no, I won't do it. We're not doing that. No. Next day, his father rang up and said, have you had any inquiries about Patrick? Oh, I said, that's interesting, isn't it? Who are you talking about? He knew, obviously. So about a week later, Chelsea came back again and said, we'll give you £1 million up front, Bosh, plus add-ons, add-ons that couldn't turn that down, like too good to turn down.
Did we have like sell-ons in add-ons?
Yeah, sell-ons and appearances and that. And he wasn't going to sign a new contract, so we sold him. So we thought, oh, we've got this £1 million now, and we'll keep that in reserve for when we maybe need it. No, the £1 million had gone. The solicitors that were running Nigel's estate after he died, they took that off their contribution to us, really. And we had murders with them. It was really difficult, honestly, with me and Mark and John Pelling, to keep the club going, keep the morale up, try and keep the seriousness of it out of the media, and improve the team. And so I spent most of my time with Steve Cottrell and on the players, and Mark and John were working with the administrative staff and that. And we managed to get to the end of the season. Miracle, really, and stay up. And then we were going to be in big trouble because the money was going to stop immediately. And the Al-Assawis appeared, who turned out to be a nightmare, but at the time,
we'll gloss over that.
Frank, can I just, before you just speak on it, Frank, sorry to interrupt you. Were we at serious risk then of potentially going bust?
Yes.
Going into admin, weren't we?
Yes.
Yeah, was it that serious?
The first risk was administration. But we could have gone bust because John Pelling, who was one of the straightest guys I've ever met in my life, was adamant that we would not trade illegally. And I didn't want to be involved in that either, you know. So there was a real danger. We used to have this bloke who was a solicitor, I think, acting for Nigel's estate. He used to come up to meet us for a meeting, and we would try and impress on him the seriousness of the situation, you know. And I would say, look, if we don't get this money, the club's going to go into administration at the very least, and you aren't going to get anything for it. Because obviously they're trying to sell the club, you know. You're not going to get anything for it. And he was, right, okay, good. And he'd get on the train and go back to St. Pancras. By the time he'd got to St. Pancras, he'd change his mind again, you know. It was a nightmare, honestly. And we somehow managed to, we managed to get through. As I say, and then, I mean, we had 3 young boys who as well as Bamford, had gone to their 18th birthdays. And they're all done very well. And one of them was Benny Osborne. And this bloke said, no, you can't sign, you can't give them new contracts. And we're not talking a lot of money, you know. I'm not talking Patrick Bamford. I mean, Patrick Bamford, when he signed for Chelsea, got $7,000 a week straight away. 5-year contract, $7,000 a week. We couldn't compete with that, you know. So this bloke said, no, you can't sign. So I just went and did it. I shouldn't have done really, but I did. Because if we hadn't signed those 3 boys, it would have destroyed the academy. Because everybody knew who they were, you know, the players, the coaches and the other players. They knew that they'd done really well in their apprenticeship coming up to 18. And if we'd have just bombed them out and said, you know, it would have destroyed the academy. And so we signed them. And Ben obviously, Ben has had a very, very good career. The other 2 didn't make it, but it was. I just thought it was really absolutely vital for the good of the club and the academy. But it was really difficult. But we managed to stay up in the miracle, as I say. And then the Albert Armies arrived. And they wanted me to resign as chairman. I had a contract as chairman. They wanted me to resign as chairman and bring their own people in, which I understood that. That's, you know, different. And so I had this contract. So they said, we'll make you an ambassador. And I said, why don't you make me a director of football? But so just appointed a young, inexperienced manager who, I can't think of his name. I'm terrible with names these days.
O'Driscoll.
Sean O'Driscoll,
He was a very good coach, very good coach, but a young and inexperienced manager. Had never managed any club of the size or the stature of Nottingham Forest. And I thought I could be a real help to him, you know, helping him to manage. Because part of the manager's job, you've got to manage up. Yeah. You just manage the dressing room, you've got to manage the boardroom. And I thought I could have been a real help to him. And I said, I don't want any more money, just keep me on that contract. And I want to be the director of football. Oh, no, we don't want anything like that. We just wanted to be an ambassador, just come to the games. And I went home, I was steaming. And I rang this friend of mine, the lad who used to be my physio at Leighton Orient. We were very good friends. I rang him, ranting and raving on the phone, and he said, listen, you silly old sod, they want to pay you good money just to come and sit to watch a football match once or twice a week. No pressure, no decisions, no aggravation. What the hell is wrong with that? Like, what's wrong with you? You know? You're getting on a bit, you know, just swallow your pride and do it. And I thought, oh, he's right, like, you know, so I did.
When you put it like that.
It was okay. I mean, the atmosphere was quite good. I was welcomed down at the training pitch. I got to know the coaches, the coaching staff, and I was quite close to the players. And then it started to change. Like, I mean, they put a lot of money in the house, but I had no idea, honestly. We had no idea.
I mean, they certainly created a buzz around the club, didn't they? With all these players coming in, players we'd never even heard of. So, you know, so there was a buzz created, but they had no idea about, certainly not about English football or how to even really run a football club, did they? And
No.
as much as they spent money, it became a disaster, didn't it? Very quickly.
Yes, it did. Yeah. Well, initially, Fawaz wasn't the chairman. You know, the cousin was the chairman.
This is cousin, yeah.
I'm not sure what his name was, but he was the chairman. He was a nice bloke.
Aida.
But he just disappeared one day. His name was taken off the chairman's board in the boardroom. He was on some pictures and there were just blank spaces. He just disappeared, and Fawaz became the chairman. And he was a nice bloke, Fawaz, but he had no idea, honestly.
Did they try looking in the Trent for him?
Sorry?
Did they try looking in the Trent for him?
No, I hadn't thought of that one, no. It was sort of a shame. I mean, I put an awful lot of money in. I lost an awful lot of money in the club. You couldn't fault them for that, but they were clueless.
Frank,
did you ever get the call halfway through the day to travel down to London to just have a meeting with Fawaz? Because he used to do that to a couple of the managers, didn't he?
I did in his last year at the club. I knew him. I'd met him obviously at the club and that kind. And in the last year, he invited me down to his house in Mayfair, and we were talking. And he said, "I want you to come and run the club for me." He said, "People are ripping me off. I'm sick of getting ripped off. There aren't enough people there that I can trust, and I want you to come and run the club. Like, you can have any title you want. You don't have to work full time if you don't want to. Blah blah blah." And I'm thinking, that sounds pretty good. Like, in the middle of this conversation, he gets a phone call from the lad who was the chief journalist at the Nottingham Forest, and I can hear him talking with this lad on the phone line. And the gist of the conversation is that the Daily Telegraph are going to print a story the next morning that the Al Hassawi have agreed to deal with this American consortium to buy the club. And this lad's been sitting on the story, obviously doing a favour to the club. But he said, "I'm going to have to print it because, you know." So when he came off the phone, I'm saying to Phil, "Where did that leave me? Like, you've just offered me a job." No, he said, "You'll be all right, Leo. I've spoken to the Americans about you, and you'll be all right." I said, "Yeah, okay." So anyway, we left it at that, and I thought about it, and I thought, I fancy that. So I had his mobile, so I rang him about 2 days later, went straight to answer phone. I left a message. You know, for a while, I've been thinking about it. I really fancy this. I'd like to come and do it. Like, and that was the last I heard of him.
You're still waiting to hear back?
Never saw him, never again. This was in the October. He never came to a game, if you remember, at Forest for the rest of that season. He was never seen at the club from October till the end of the season. And I've never heard from him since that day. That's just amazing. Incredible.
We would hear, Frank, we would hear some stories. I don't want to say who told us it, but there was talks that he never got up before 1 p.m. That he never knew what a board meeting was. It had to be set up from the rest of the staff. And when he was in there, he was quite fond of like games on his phone. Didn't take the board meeting seriously.
I don't know. I've no idea about his sleeping habits. And, I don't know, but he wasn't. He wasn't a good chairman. No, I don't think we had a board in those days. Anyway, it was a family, you know, so he could have a board meeting whenever he wanted or not have one. But he.
Listen, Frank,
this is typical of me. He appointed a chief executive who he met. He was in a restaurant one night, and he took a shine to the head waiter and gave him a job as chief executive at Forest.
Seriously.
And I mean,
you're not even joking.
He was even with us.
Stuart Pearce said he was basically balmy.
Yeah.
Fawaz was basically balmy.
Yeah.
Putting it politely. Oh, bless you, Frank. You made us
Listen,
laugh.
Frank, we got so many more questions, but I'm just looking at the time, and we've kept you
Yeah, it's
on
my
way
bedtime.
too long.
No, bless you. Thank you so much.
I just want to quickly shout out to Emma, who's donated £5. Say great stream, guys. I think the chat have really enjoyed it. There's well over 300 in here, just gasping on every word you're saying.
Good.
Frank, can we promise the chat you will be back some point in the future, because we got a
Yeah, why
million more
not?
questions.
Yeah.
Part two.
Yeah, why
Yeah,
not?
you think your iPad's dropped a little, Frank. I could just about see.
I'm trying to hold on to it. It's getting away.
Bless you.
We thought you'd nodded off.
My computer's packed up like that. I'm not using my wife's iPad, and I'm not sure how best to use it. Like, but there you go. But yeah, no, it'd be a pleasure to come back.
Oh, thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Can we show some love for the legend that is Frank
Yeah.
Clark? Frank, I just want to say on behalf of us and the chat, I'm sure they'll all agree with me. Just listening to what you've said has really given us an insight onto how much you almost bled for Forest. You know, all the stress you were taking on, all the jobs you were coming on, the situations that you were coming into. I found it so fascinating tonight to hear all that. And you've always just come across as a lovely, down-to-earth, level-headed guy. Yet when we hear all the stresses you've had to go through in your time at Forest, I feel more endeared to you than I didn't think that was possible. And I'm sure the chat are exactly the same. And for me, it's just a massive thank you for everything you've done.
Oh, yeah.
All right. Well, listen, it's been a pleasure. Most of it, anyway. Yeah.
Bless you. Thank you for making us laugh, Frank, and some great stories and reliving
glad
some
you
amazing
enjoyed it.
memories as well.
Yeah,
Try and read the comments if you can, Frank, because
the
you
messages
get
are
so
coming
much
through
love in there, mate.
thick and fast. All the hearts and the thank yous are all there. We will close it there, chat. I hope you've enjoyed it. It's been a fascinating evening. I could go on for another couple of hours. No doubt you guys could as well.
Yeah.
So thank you all so much for listening in. And of course, the main thanks goes to the legend that is Frank Clark. Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks very much.
Thank you, Frank.
And we will
Absolute
see you
honor.
guys soon. We'll end the
Cheers,
stream there.